Welcome to Beyond Service Podcast. I'm the host, Owen Waters. The idea behind it was to speak to veterans to understand how they've transitioned from military to civilian life. Paddy, welcome to the podcast.
Firstly, look, listen, thanks very much.
If you were going to give advice to somebody still serving who wants to kind of leave the military or is currently making that transition, what's the key bits that you'd pass on to somebody doing that?
I think really quickly, what's really important to understand for anybody leaving the services, okay, be humble. And I never assumed, as a regimental sergeant major RSM top of the tree, I'd just get given a job. You have to get out of that mindset. I didn't have that mindset because I was humbled by other people telling me this before. What's really important to understand is you are starting again.
Welcome to Beyond Service Podcast. This podcast was set up by myself. I'm the host, Owen Waters. The idea behind it was to speak to veterans to understand how they've transitioned from military to civilian life. In particular, to speak to veterans who are moving into or have moved into the SME sector. So today, I'm really excited to speak to a good friend of mine, Scott Dyson, or as I know him and everyone else and all his mates know him as Paddy Dyson. Paddy has had an exceptional career in the Royal Yorkshire Regiment. He served for, up to this point, about 24 years. He's joined the army as a soldier and is leaving as the regimental sergeant major of his battalion, of our battalion. To put that in some context for people that don't fully understand military ranks, only 1% of people that join the army will ever make it to the rank of regimental sergeant major. So that puts Paddy in an absolute elite group of people and gives some context to how successful and exceptional his career has been up to this point. I served with Paddy for a number of years, had the privilege to witness his leadership and his dedication in real life. So it's a real honor for me to speak to him today. Paddy is now finishing his regular career in the army, and we'll come on to the reasons and some of the challenges and around that in the podcast. But what's really impressed me, and the reason I wanted to speak to Paddy, and the reason that actually I'm speaking to Paddy while he's still serving, which is the first time we've done that on this podcast. Usually we speak to people who've already made that transition. But the reason I wanted to speak to Paddy today was because since that decision was made to move on from his military career, his drive, his focus, his enthusiasm, and some of the practical steps that he's taken, again, have shown his leadership, his dedication, and his enthusiasm. And he's really worked hard to find what is now an ideal role for him in the civilian sector. I know that we're going to pick up some amazing hints and tips from Paddy. We'll get some great stories. We'll have a bit of a laugh, I'm sure. So I'm really looking forward to this podcast, and I hope that our viewers and our listeners enjoy it as well. Paddy, welcome to the podcast.
Owen, thank you very much. It's a pleasure, as always, for having me.
Good man. I'm excited for this one, mate. Great. So I suppose it'd be great for our listeners just to understand, if you could just tell us a little bit about who you are today. I'm conscious of giving a bit of an introduction there, but give us a bit of context to what you're doing right now. And then I suppose we could start from the beginning, really, and why you joined the military and just a bit of a background on your service, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, Owen, yeah. Firstly, look, listen, thanks very much. I was, when you come out with the podcast stuff, helping people like me that's transitioning and the people that are going to be transitioning, I always said it, and I thought it'd be worth mentioning this before we start. I always said that everything, I were given and all the help I were given, I wanted to pay that forward afterwards. So this has been kind of like the first thing I'm doing. So thanks very much for this opportunity, and I really do appreciate it. So yeah, that's me, Paddy. As my wife and my mum knows me as Scott Dyson, but let's go with Paddy. I'm happy with that. Coming to an end of a regular army career, 20, what will be probably just short 25 years. I'm currently on my resettlement leave now, so it's like your last 3 to 4 months of service before you hand your ID card in, say farewells and whatever manner that might be, and you exit the army. So I've been doing it, like I say, for 20 odd years, 24 years. My last job was the Regimental Sergeant Major of the Royal Yorkshire Regiment, based on Wiltshire, where I performed my last duty as the RSM. That came to an end for me before summer, in July, and then I'm lucky enough to spend the summer on my resettlement leave at home up in Leeds, in the north of England, where I am continuing to finalise my resettlement programme before I move on to my new employment in the new year. So I think I joined the army in 2001 as a young private soldier, and started off my career in Northern Ireland with the 1st Battalion, the Prince of Wales Own Regiment of Yorkshire, our anti-siege regiment. And then I progressed through my career from private soldier all the way up to WO1 and lately Regimental Sergeant Major, which I'm very proud of.
Should be, mate.
Including in that 24 years, I've gone through the ranks from private soldier to Lance Corporal, Full Corporal, Sergeant, Colour Sergeant, WO2, and then finally WO1. A few jobs at each level. A few of those jobs in particular was an instructor as a young corporal at ITC, where we train our future soldiers, adult entry soldiers. As a sergeant, I was the instructor teaching our school leavers, so 16 years onwards, at Harrogate. As a colour sergeant, I again taught our already soldiers progression to be commanders at the infantry battle school at Brecker, which I believe you was at, Owen. As a colour sergeant on the junior wing division, teaching our lance corporals to be infantry corporals. Then after that, another stint back at Harrogate as a sergeant major, teaching our young cohort as well. And then finally ended up doing Regimental Sergeant Major, going back to the battalion as the RSM at 2 Royal Yorks. Clearly there's a lot more in between those, a lot of jobs, a lot of places, a lot of tours, in particular where we first met, Owen, in Germany, and then obviously doing all our training to get us out to Afghanistan, and Iraq, Bosnia, multiple overseas deployments to Kenya, Belize, the Falklands of all places. Spent plenty of time on Salisbury Plain at battle group level exercises, which I will not miss one bit.
Young man's game, that, mate. Young man's game, unfortunately.
And then from the north of England down to the south, all the way around exercising. And that's really a broad brush of my career, where I am at the moment.
Amazing, mate. I mean, like I said at the start, an absolute stellar military career. No one can say that away from you, mate. And like I say, I saw it from, I think you were a corporal when we met, and I could tell then that you just had the natural leadership, and your style was probably slightly different to a lot of the NCOs I work with, but it was your style, and you were always went with your gut and your instincts, and it was usually right. And yeah, we've had some good times on the way. Interesting, really interesting there. That I find it quite poignant that you talked a lot about your instructor roles there, and I think people don't fully appreciate how important those roles are in the military. I think when certainly civilians think about the military, they just think about going out and fighting wars and all that sort of stuff, and shooting guns and all that bit. But actually, what's really important in the military is that piece around training the next generation and getting experienced people like yourself in to go and do that. And they're quite prestigious jobs, and going back to Brecon like I did is seen as a really great thing to do, and it's an amazing experience. But it's just quite funny that you highlighted that. And was that is that quite important roles to you in your career?
Yeah, so I think I'm really humble for what the Army's given me, and I have met some tremendously good people and some toxic people. Let's be honest, it's in every society or every sector. But what really motivated me is inspiring the next generation of leaders. So when and I'm not giving myself a pat on the back, but when I did my first junior commander's course to be a lance corporal, I sat in a classroom about 30 individuals, all same peer group. Majority of us were all friends, so a bit of a competition there. And the instructor, sergeant at the time, said, 4 you people in here statistically will make WO1 and 2 of you will make regimental sergeant major. And I was what potentially turned out to be one of them, and another good friend of mine, who I probably won't mention, he is a regimental sergeant major as well. And I think that inspired me to do well, and it gave me a focus. And I think I'm going to leave the army like I am now in 25 years' time. We need to continue to build our leaders. And if I can have a small little part of that, be a small little part of that, then that's my motivation. I think you mentioned before, everyone's got a different leadership style. You've got the screaming skull to the laid back, laissez-faire kind of people, and the grey people. Everyone's different. I'm never claimed to be the best leader, the best, commander. But I think what's really important is that you be yourself, and people really, really appreciate that. And like I said before, I've had some really bad experiences, and then have some really good experiences. So if you can just get the balance right and pass that on, then and I think that's really important to me. And as I've gone through my career, each rank, I've kind of like given that back in that rank at a stool or a depot. But I've really enjoyed that. And at the same time, it generally comes after you've just done a hard 2 years in battalion as sergeant major, and it's kind of like your respite. So if your stars aligned, it's quite good, and it's a good progressive stream to be on. Not everyone does it. Not everyone's interested in doing that. Everyone's careers are completely different. But for me, it gave me stability, give me an opportunity to give back, okay, and a bit of respite as well. So that's it.
Yeah, which is important. That's amazing, and I think some really interesting bits you pulled out there. I think one of them is that there's an individual way of doing things. Yeah, there's a structure in the military. We teach tactics, we teach skills and drills, etc. But what I think is missed in civilian life, or in civilian employers potentially have a misconception, is that we just come out as robots, and there's only one way of doing things, and it's screaming and shouting, and it's this and that. And I think the army it's so different to that. I think one of the things that you realize as you work through the ranks is like you've got to be yourself, because like you're going to be in scenarios with your soldiers, with the people that you command or whatever, or your peers, where you're not going to have slept for 3 or 4 days. They're going to see you at your very worst. So you get to know people. You see them when the guard is down, and I think if you're not true to yourself and true to the way that you lead, then people see that really quickly. So there is flexibility in how you go about it. Yes, there's there's standards and there's values and there's all that sort of stuff, but they're a framework. It's not like you have to be this way, there's no other way to lead. So I think what employers need to realize is you're not going to get someone who's had a long career like yourself. You've got all these amazing experiences, but you've done it your way, and you've figured out who you are as a leader and who you are as a person. So they're going to get somebody in who's very well rounded, rather than somebody who's just going to think one way about things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And without going down too much of a rabbit hole of it, I think there's a time and place to be that screaming, shouting, short and sharp motivation, and you've experienced that, I've experienced that, and you're the person delivering that, and I have been at the same time. But it's just a balance to get right. And like anything, everything evolves. The army's evolved, the people have evolved, the culture's evolved. So you just need to get that balance right. Some people struggle with it, some people don't, but it's all about just being yourself, being genuine. And for me, it's about, would I do that? Would I speak to somebody like that? It's about respect, and humility and stuff. So, yeah, some people might watch this and go, you just have to be this, but it's just not that in my opinion. Okay, and it's worked for me. So
Exactly. Great. Oh, I'd love to chat more about the kind of next stages and what kind of, I suppose, what kind of motivated the move from the military. And I know there's a story behind this, and I'd caveat with this, with like everyone's got different reasons for leaving the military, and like I was fortunate to be able to make that decision on my own terms, and to be honest, like there was times I regretted it. I'd probably left a little bit too early, and there's some regrets around some of that, which is part of the reason why I went and did some reserve service afterwards. But some people get medically discharged. There's things where there's not roles available or contracts come to an end, and so sometimes it's outside of people's control, and that can be a challenging situation. But I'd love to know more about where you're at with that, Paddy, if you're comfortable sharing that, and then we can talk about kind of what happened from there.
Yeah, so before I crack on, I mean, I genuinely used to get people leaving the army for whatever reasons in my office. They used to come as part of the process of leaving, and I always had a conversation with these individuals based on why they're leaving. And quite often enough, I found people just leaving because they'd had an hard 12 months or it didn't quite suit what they wanted to do, and they was leaving on a whim and somewhat ill-unprepared leaving the army. So I always give them my, spin on that, and maybe think about this and maybe think about that. I've had individuals in my office that are leaving the army because the time's done, and the army said, "Thank you very much, Mr. X or Mrs. X, you're done. That's your career and done." I haven't really gauged that. I didn't really have much to say on that because I haven't experienced that myself. And it was a case of, well done, you've done your time. Thank you very much. We're here to help, X, Y, and Z if you need any support afterwards. So there's loads of reasons why people leave. And I've been one of those people that have had to speak to individuals. And when it actually happens to yourself, okay, I don't go see myself and have that conversation. And so my story and my exit from the regular service, I was like any job, you're contracted, you join the army. For me, a private soldier, I think it's still the same. Once you're 18 and over a certain time limit, you're then contracted for 4 years, where you have to give 4 years back to the army. Rightly so, they spend a lot of money on developing you and bringing you to the standards. You sign a contract, that's you. Then after that, your contract's open for like a rolling year annual contract. So if you want to get out after that 4-year point, then you would just sign and then do your last 12 months and resettle X, Y, and Z. For me, that's where I was. I was enjoying my time in the army year on, year out. There was lots going on in the last 20 years. You only have to read the papers and yourself, and anybody knows that the last 20 years has been really busy for the MOD, in particular for the army and the different things that we've been on. So that's kept me in there. It's been the carrot, because it's all been the good stuff that I joined the army for. That, I moved through the ranks relatively quick, in line with my peers, maybe a little bit faster in some areas, but, I still moved on. And then I come to pensionable age within the army at the time, so 18 years, you can take a full pension and then leave after that. That probably would have been the point for me where I would have, if I was going to leave, I would have had a full army pension at whatever rank I left, and it'd have been fantastic. But again, more opportunities came along, good stuff were happening. My wife was really resilient as well. She's like, yeah, you stay in the army, I'm content being up here, that's fine. And then it got to 23 and a half year point early last year. And when you're at this point at a certain rank, there's an opportunity in the infantry to go for an extended service as a officer, in particular captain that you was, Owen, in the regulars. But we would go in as a late entry officer. So like an old lad or a lass moving over as a captain in the officer world. So guess what? I've done everything else. I give it a bash last year. I was unsuccessful for whatever reason. And then that was the point for me was, well, I wasn't ready. Sorry, I didn't get it this year. I'm not going again next year. One, because I couldn't, because of my time scale. And that was the point in my career where I was leaving. I'd give that a bash. 24 years service. Can't go any further. The army deemed my contract to be finished. Absolutely fine. And then I started to look for my next employment in November last year. So the last, 10, 11 months. And that's when I'm going on. But it definitely came with some really seriously unhealthy conversations and panic. I go back to what I said at the beginning, that person in my office. I realised that my time was done and that the army's finished, and I kind of like crumbled is the only sense there. Because I was expected to have a good shot at being an LE captain, which would give me another 10, 15 years service. Never banked on it because but then it just dawned on me that the army's kind of like done. My career's finished in a regular service, and I panicked like because with a new baby on the way at the time, a 5-year-old, a wife, the soldiers and man of the house. I straight away thought about my family. What am I going to do? I need to make sure I'm set up correctly for moving on, and I genuinely panicked. What came after that was like what we call machine gun effect. I finished in the army. What do? I wasn't sure about where I would fit into the civilian workspace, whether it was corporate, self-employed, or just in a steady kind of like 9-to-5 job. So I decided that I was going to test everything and see where I fit in it. But that's definitely where it started.
Well, mate, it's tough. Like, it's like I said at the start of that question, there's so many reasons why people leave, and it's to almost have that taken out of your hands a little bit. Like you said, you didn't bank on it. It was one of those like, maybe I'll get another 10 or 15 years service. And you're right, anybody in that scenario is going to done what you've done and panicked a little bit and be like, what do I do now? And I chose to leave on my own terms, and I still was panicking, like, what am I going to do now? Like, because I don't think we've fully, I only did 8 years, I didn't really know what jobs you could do in civilian life, or what my transferable skills are going to be, or, it was kind of like, I've been going down this track, and I joined the army fully thinking I was going to do a full career, and then decided it wasn't necessary for me. But it's hard, and particularly when you've done 24, 25 years, mate, that's a long time. But I think from what I've seen, and we obviously caught up when that happened, and there's a little bit like a breakup, isn't it? It's almost like a bit, it's almost like you've got to deal with that kind of heartbreak a little bit, and then kind of live in it for a minute, take it on board, like deal with that scenario, and that's what you did. And I know there was a period of time where you were just a bit like, I'm not sure what the plan is now, but fair play to you, and it shows the resilience that's been baked into you over 25 years. And part of the, one of the key things I think that military people bring to the civilian world is that level of resilience, because it's just built into what we do. But you went from that sort of, like you described it, panic, to pivot, right, what do I do now? And having witnessed what you've done, and we'll come on to that, to transition and to find your new role, that the level of detail, the level of enthusiasm, the level of engagement that you put into it it's probably one of the best I've seen from anybody that's transitioned, mate. So that's to your credit at the end of the day. But yeah, be good to, if you could just highlight, mate, for the listeners, for people that are going through this transition or are thinking about leaving or have already left potentially and are still not sure what they want to do. How did you approach that job search while you're still serving? And so what tools or strategies did you lean on to help you with that?
Yeah, cool. I think it's worth just mentioning before when that as much as I said the army had like finished me, the army gave me so much.
Yes. Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight that I joined the army just after my 18th birthday,
and
I'm leaving, just before my 43rd birthday. The army, I joined with nothing from school because I was focused on joining that. The army has educated me, given me a lifestyle, given me, everything. And I am who I am today because of the army. So it's worth mentioning that.
Yeah, well said, mate.
And, from having no education to doing a postgraduate diploma in strategic leadership management, which is then going to take me on to a master's, and that's personal CPD. That's, thank you very much. So it's worth mentioning that. But like anything, things do come to an end, whether it's yourself or your contract. It is what it is, and I'm really happy moving forward. But yeah, so going back to the strategy, like I said, I used the term, my head fell off. Realise and everybody that's in the army, served in the army, will probably be able to relate to that, including yourself. I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. So the first thing I did do is reach out to my good mate who I mentioned before, who was another RSM, who was leaving as well. And he talked to me about LinkedIn, this application, a bit like Facebook apparently, but for jobs. Bear in mind, I'm quite a private person and I don't have social media. WhatsApp social media to me. If I panic, if I sent wrong thing, and my friend Tom said, I'm on LinkedIn. It's worth have a look at it. And I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So I did a 120-mile round trip and drove up to where he's located and sat down behind his computer in his own. And he set me up a LinkedIn profile. That's how out of touch I was with this stuff. And then from there, it gathered momentum, and I wasn't being very active on it. I was just finding people that I potentially knew from old. Bear in mind, I'm not on Facebook. Requesting friend, request. And I think that Tom said, do probably 50 a week and then build a network, start talking to people. And it took me a good few weeks to really understand LinkedIn and how you could get it to work for you. And then, so I just used LinkedIn. I found loads of people, I think including yourself, Owen, maybe through there, or at least I was tracking what you were doing. Loads of people that I were in the army with, loads of civilian friends that are on there. And I'd request to be a connection, and hoping they'd come to me and be like, hey ups, Paddy or Scott, can I help you out? And that kind of happened. And then I just started getting on there, networking, inboxing people going, hi, I'm really interested in what you do. I think I might be a suit to it. I'm still unsure. I'm in this space where I'm not sure what I want to do. And then what I've really quickly found out on LinkedIn is an absolute massive space for service leavers and ex-forces and veterans, small little sideline groups, which I tend to keep away from. So I wanted to just be, streamlined. I just wanted to be open about it all. And people were coming to me going, hiya, Scott. I used to be ex-forces. I'm now doing this. I'll give you 100%, give you 10 minutes of my time. We'll have a chat and see and see if I can help you or give you a good steer. So that's how it started. And I just started talking to people, including you, Owen. And then we got chatting, and you were part of this process. You give me the confidence. And it's important to say it gives you confidence, because in the army, as much as you have confidence, you kind of know what your next job is. and next job and next job, and you've got that blanket of people like career officers that are looking after your best interest because that's their job as well as yours. So you kind of like don't have to worry about your next job or your next pay packet, I suppose, which comes with the job. So I use LinkedIn a bit like I'd use my network in the army. Help me. I'm not sure what I want to do. What do you suggest? And I just gathered a really good group of people on LinkedIn and just started to ask them if they had 10 minutes of their time to chat to me about what they did. And the reason I asked that is because I just didn't understand what SAP, what a project manager might be. Apparently, there's multiple different operation managers in the sector. There's op managers for op managers, albeit I was an operations warrant officer for the army and the regiment. Until you speak to these people, actually, the principles are the same, but it's completely different stuff you're doing. So that's where I started on LinkedIn, and it kind of like gathered momentum. And then I started to speak to people about how I could really highlight myself on LinkedIn without highlighting myself. And someone mentioned to me, tell your story about who you are, what you're doing, and what you want to be. That's the most important thing. I was still really unsure what I wanted to be because I just didn't have a clue. I joined the army all that years ago and just didn't have a clue. Everyone, I think there's a stat out there, don't quote me, I think it's about 60% of people, service leavers, assume they just want to be a project manager because they're good at managing projects, people and things, which we are in a military context. But in a civilian context, it's, there's got the differences, and this is what I've learned. So I started doing LinkedIn, reached out to people, surrounded myself with some really good people. In fact, everybody who connected with me really good people for connecting me. And then I just started to do a weekly blog, which I think you were referring to earlier about I will show. So I started to do a weekly blog going, hi, hello everybody again. It's me. This week or this next 2 weeks, I'm focusing on the NHS and where Paddy Scott can fit into the NHS. This is what I think I'm good at doing. This is what I want to do. Hashtag NHS, hashtag all the hospitals, all the people that I knew on LinkedIn that was anything to do with NHS, managers, line managers, everybody. And people started inboxing, and I think they were humbled by it as well because I was asking them for their opinion and their advice. And that started generating loads of conversations on an evening. And I just started talking to people. And then at the end of like that week or that 2 week of me looking into different roles and different sectors, I would then finish off on saying, thank you, everybody. It's been fantastic. I've learned so much. X, Y, and Z, and then I'd move on to the next kind of job I think I'd find I'd want to be doing, like a project manager in the defence industry.
Right.
And then I would just tag loads of people again, different companies, McDonald, all those kind of people. And then I just started to do that. And then that kind of like helped me identify. So I went from like this, not having a clue what I want to do, to narrowing my vision down to like 4 or 5 different sectors, and that's what I kept doing, and then it comes with loads of different stuff. And I think what I found as well is that there's a lot of imposter syndrome. I wasn't giving myself the right credit for what I've gained and what I've got and what I can do, and I was put off by titles and roles and salary based on my own experience. I'm like, well, that's a bloody CEO's pay, is that? I'm definitely not that. I'm on this and on that, and that would naturally put me off initially, until one day I bumped into a hiring manager at a massive consulting firm, and he said, Scott, send me your CV Bear in mind, it's like version 308. I eventually took out all the army acronyms and X, Y, and Z, and I sent in my CV, and I didn't hear anything back. And then about 3 weeks later, I got an email from this individual saying, "Oh, hiya, Scott. The business director for this consulting firm wants to speak to you, and they're really interested in you, and they want to get to know you. Are you available?" And again, my head fell off, and I'm like, "Oh my crikey!" And that's then where I started to reach out to other people about interviews and CVs and how to dress and put my name across. But I mean, and then I started to reach out to people, like I just said, and said, "Hi everyone, I've got an interview." Whoa, didn't say who it was for, because I just didn't say who it was for. I've got an interview, and I've never done it apart from 1 or 2 interviews, a part of the process of becoming a captain. I've never done an interview with a civilian firm before. Please help. Basically, that's what it was. And then I started getting inboxes saying, "More than happy to give me a tag." And I was really humbled by it, and I reached out to tons of people. But one in particular person who you know very well, I think, and he probably won't mind me mentioning his name because I've mentioned his name publicly on LinkedIn, was Jim Kennedy.
Legend.
Former Yorkshire Regiment, Royal Yorkshire Regiment, company commander when I was a young corporal in Afghanistan, and then to the battalion CO for one of our battalions. And it was really funny actually, because I requested him to be a friend and I didn't put any message out, and then like inboxed me back to a week later going, "Oi, I'm now your friend. What do you want? Let's chat." So like, "Oh, cool." Last time I spoke to him, I think he was just taking over command as CO, and then maybe as company commander, and then as a young soldier, you're like, "Who's my boss?" kind of thing. And actually, I just set up a meeting with him, and he's currently working out in Middle East, doing some fantastic work and with his family and stuff. And he mentored me in the shape of interviewing, apply myself, how to navigate, difficult questions, what not to do, what not to say, what to wear was really important, what not to wear. And really importantly as well, they kept mentioning, just be yourself. And sometimes it's hard to be yourself when you're trying to impress. Jim spent hours on WhatsApp, on Teams. Bear in mind, there's time difference of 4 hours, evenings. And he really helped me. In fact, he really helped me get himself in the best position for that interview. And funny enough, that interview spiraled into what probably was going to be a job offer. But unfortunately, I got 3 job offers at the time, and I had to make another decision. That's another conversation we can have, based on any further questions. But yeah, and that rate slow. So I think my point is, I got out on LinkedIn. I was pretty shy. Shy kids don't get sweets unless you ask. You're just not getting any help, and it's not coming to you. And I did, and it comes to fruition. And I've reconnected with lots of really good people, including yourself, and people that I thought I might never speak to again, just because of the way the world is. And it's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I'll still continue to speak to these individuals as well.
Amazing, mate. Yeah, listen, I mean, I know I got to witness a lot of that. Yeah, we connected again, which was great. And this obviously led to this podcast, which is even better. But
yeah,
in terms of like why I saw, one of the questions I was going to say was, was it that, what helped you stand out to employers? Was it your military experience? Was it the way you told your story? And I think you've answered that really well there, really eloquently, where I used to look forward to your updates on LinkedIn, because you're right. You weren't just like, can anyone help me get a job? You were like telling a story and like, and allowing people to see like who you are, what you're doing, the challenges, the ups, the downs, but engaging with an audience. And And that speaks to people. People then just are like, I'm enjoying this. This guy sounds like he's really trying. He's doing all this good stuff. And it's a lesson for a lot of people because, yeah, you know, you're not naturally a social media person and it's probably difficult to put yourself out there. But you're right, putting yourself out there, showing people that you're on a journey, what you're trying to do, the steps you're trying to take, you never know where conversations are going to lead. And I think that's so critical that because a lot of people, and I remember the conversation we had, one of the first things I said to you was like, try and figure out what you don't want to do. Not necessarily what you want to do, just start ticking off the stuff you don't want to do, and that'll sharpen it down. And that's what you did. And because you're right, everyone thinks, yeah, I'll be a project manager. That sounds great. Yeah, I'll just do that. And I did it and I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't for me. And, you know, I think a lot of people can take the lessons of, actually, do I want to do that? And instead of just kind of going, yeah, I'll be a project manager, it sounds fine. You actually took the time to find out and speak to people who are doing those jobs or have done those jobs and understand what that entails, what it is. And then that could give you a real understanding of like, maybe this isn't right for me. You know, this doesn't feel like the right role. But I mean, I'm awesome to see what you did, and so many lessons, I think, for people to learn from that. I suppose we're coming towards the end of this, and I always try and wrap up with some last bits of advice. And you know, you've pulled out some amazing stuff there. But if you were going to give advice to somebody still serving, who wants to kind of leave the military or is currently making that transition, what's the key bits of advice that you'd pass on to somebody doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my experience from all this process is giving me a bit of advice. I haven't got the ultimate advice for it. I've only got it from my own experience. I think really quickly, what's really important to understand for anybody leaving the services, Army, Navy, Air Force, whatever it is, okay, be humble, because your rank, whatever you leave at, you might be superior. Can't say the word. You might be high up there in the Army, and I never assumed, you know, as a regimental sergeant major, RSM, top of the tree, I'd just get given a job. You know, you have to get out of that mindset. And I didn't have that mindset because I was humbled by other people telling me this before. It's really important to understand is you are starting again. And that's why it's so important to be yourself. Don't try to be anyone different. Just be yourself. And when you're speaking to people, whether it's in an interview, it's linking in on LinkedIn, just be yourself, and people appreciate that more. And that's what I kind of like did. But be prepared to start at the bottom as well in any sector you do, because you did it in the Army and you're certainly going to have to do it in civilian employment. You know, there's a few occasions where people land on their feet, you know, and we know those people, you know, X, Y, and Z, and great, fine, great. Lastly, not lastly, but secondly, don't expect to do your first job and you'll be in that job for the rest of your time.
Good advice, I mean.
I'm in a position, and I'll speak about my job, if I'm in a position where it's slightly different, where I'm probably going to be that, because it's a business and endeavor and a plan with a small company at the moment. But assume you're going to take one or two jobs before you find your feet in civilian street. That's exactly what I've been told and seen as well from everybody. But for me, the main advice I would give is put yourself out there, surround yourself with really good people on whatever platform, whether that's LinkedIn, Facebook. Remember your connections in the Army, because they know more connections outside the Army. When you're on LinkedIn, do not just surround yourself with ex-serving people, because they're in. Do that, but don't just limit yourself to those ex-serving people. It's easy to do. One advice that Jim Kennedy gave me was, depending on what sector you want to do or think what you want to do, find people on LinkedIn that are in those jobs. You don't know them, request a connection, put a bit of context behind it, and ask for 5 or 10 minutes of their time to discuss it. And that was the hardest thing I had to do, because I did it because Jim set me to task, and I had another meeting with Jim a week later, and he went, by then I want to know who it is, what you've talked about. And I did to about 5 or 6 people, and I got 4 responses, 3 very positive, 1 a slightly negative, which can be off-putting, and someone else just didn't get back to me. But that's fine. That is what it is. Okay. But do that, and that opens more doors. Okay. And people are humbled by it as well. Asking them about their time and service in outside of the military, and that's really important. And yeah, just like I say, shy kids don't get sweets, and if you don't ask for help, you're not going to get it. And if you think you're an RSM, regimental sergeant major, leaving them, someone's not going to come knocking on you and go and say, "Hey, here's a job, and by the way, how much money do you want? Because you're a legend in army." Yes, and I might. To some people, I am. To some people, I'm not. But that's really important. Okay, put yourself out there. Don't be shy in asking people for help, because actually you need help. Okay, because I've never done this before, and it's come to fruition with me. I'm going to work in a micro company and a 3-year business plan, where I'm going to, at the end of it, fingers crossed, all goes well, take over as the owner of this business.
Amazing.
Year 1, I'm the senior ops manager for this company. Year 2, I'm going to be a director and moving on. But I'm proud to say that, because I've worked hard to get to where I am, albeit this opportunity didn't come through LinkedIn. It came through an email through the Veterans Network, which I jumped on, and it's come to fruition. But it's all about connecting and LinkedIn and putting yourself out there. I didn't know this individual. I spoke to 3 people. I'm now signed a contract where I'm an employee, and then to be the owner of this business at the end of it. And
Amazing.
Absolutely thrilled. And lastly, what I will say is the 3 job offers I got, I won't mention the companies, apart from the one I've got, which is eCozy. Okay. The first one was very corporate. The second one was an operations manager for a steel firm, but they had no left or right or up, no progression. And I think soldiers need progression. I certainly do. And the other one was what will be business owner, self-employed, run your own character, out and about in the fresh air in the UK, up and down the country. And they all came on different salaries. Okay. And, some fantastic salaries. And I'll go back to imposter syndrome. Ultimately, having spoken to my wife, which is key, your family is key in this process. You need to make it work for your family. Is that I turned down, the other 2 for this one because it was me. It was me. I'm not going to be sat down at a desk. That just didn't suit me. With a carrot and stick against the bonus, trying to organise corporate people and stuff like that. I have to be out and about, and that's really the key for your mental health as well.
Amazing. Mate, that is an amazing point to finish on. Like, genuinely, I think to see the work you've put into not only your stellar career, but the transition process and how much effort and time and dedication you put to that, to then land on with three great job opportunities, but to make the call based on what's right for you, not just on a salary or a location or whatever, or a job title. Because I think people can get sucked into those traps to choose it for what's right for you and your family, mate. That's a brilliant final piece of advice for anyone listening to this.
And sorry, I did forget to mention, I'm conscious of time, but it's really important too, is when you leave the army as a regular soldier, I definitely last year when my head fell off, was like, I am done with the army. I don't want to be it anymore, to then now applying to the reserve, our reserve unit, 4 on locks, because we need to retain really good people in our reserve forces. Okay. And I'm going through an application now, and watch this space in the next week or 2, especially on LinkedIn for my update. That's really important. And you think you don't need it, but I certainly do. And it comes with security. And that's pending on your new job, allowing you to do that, which eCozy is, which is fantastic. And lastly, your family is so important in this whole process. Don't get short-sighted to the fact that I need to find this job. It's all about me. It's all about you and your family's needs as well. and that does come with its challenges too. But for me and my wife and my children, and Chester, my dog, who's snoring down there, it's so important for us, and it's worked out really well. And anyone can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Scott Dyson, not Paddy. You'll see me in a regimental shirt and jacket. Okay, I'm here to help, like you are, Owen. You did for me, and like Jim did, and everybody else. I'm here to help. From my own experiences, I've got a network of really good people, hiring managers across a plethora of industries, and I'm doing it currently. I'm mentoring 2 young Marines through their process, and I'd love to give back in that fashion where time will allow. Thank you very much, Owen. Generally appreciate it.
Paddy, what an absolute legend. Thanks so much for the chat, mate.
Cheers.